The greatest obstacle in the way of self-mastery is lack of consciousness of the desires which are not born from the ego, lack of consciousness of self, lack of consciousness of being. It is necessary to be fully aware of what should be mastered. This is simple to learn to distinguish desires born from the mass and those desires born from the spirit. If it is possible, a list should be made of all desires emanating from the mass and those belonging to the ego. It must be understood that to master something does not mean killing or suffocating. Mastery means accomplishing something only when the intelligent, willing ego desires this. Self-mastery means possession, fully to possess the physical vehicle or body, which is the abode of the spirit. It means that the spirit has fully adapted its vehicle to its needs. Only then does the spirit fulfill the objective which brought it into life, that is, to be able to act on matter as easily and consciously as it had previously done on its original plane. Only then is the person able to think seriously of accomplishing any specific task. The physical body is a heavy load for the spirit when it does not respond to the messages and actions the spirit desires it to undertake. It is like a dark veil which limits and clouds the vision. Self-mastery is learning to handle perfectly the complex and extraordinary machinery which comprises the physical body. The general human condition can be compared to the situation of an individual who enters a very complicated automobile and does not know how to drive. The physical body of a man who has not cultivated or developed his consciousness is like an automobile traveling a long distance without a driver. In order to visualize clearly the spiritual problem of mankind, we will cite the following similitude. The spirit is pure energy of high vibration, which penetrates a material body of low vibration. All that the spirit tries to exteriorize is lost, as this is like a radio transmitter which transmits on high frequency and has to be retransmitted to a low frequency receiver, the body. As can be easily understood, it is impossible for this receiver, the body, to receive anything at all until its frequency is increased to the level of the transmitter, the spirit. This briefly is the road toward occultism, stripped of all lies, vagueness, and grandiosity. Now then, what is the means of raising the vibration of the body or mass? This mass is of low vibration because it is raw material without consciousness. This raw material must be then stripped of its bestial automatism and provided with a consciousness through the mind, giving consciousness to the hands, arms, legs, feet, brain, heart, and liver. In previous pages, we have established that everything is mind. Through a conscious mind, it is possible then to modify the basic vibration of an organ or limb, projecting and locating consciousness within it. For example, does not a painter supply complete consciousness to his hands so that these faithfully portray what his mind sees and commands? The power of the human mind is limitless, and the time will come when man will attain a perfect mastery of the mind, and this will enable him to materialize his thoughts and give him the ability to arrive at the integration of matter. Through his mind, he will be able to modify his cellular structure, overcoming old age and death, for the mental principle is immortal. One should meditate deeply on the meaning of being conscious and being awake. Chapter 11. Development of consciousness. Basic premise: man is a machine. Nothing can be accomplished in the development of consciousness if the student does not fully understand the truth of this statement. Man is a machine. He can do nothing. He can accomplish nothing. Everything happens to him. He has no free will. He is at the mercy of the law of accidents. Following upon that stated previously in this treatise, the attentive reader already has the basic data to understand his mechanical state. Once this has been experienced, it is possible to act slowly awakening until aroused from a dreamlike or mechanical state. Naturally, for man to emerge alone from a dreamlike state and be conscious is difficult, for soon after beginning to emerge, he again falls asleep and has no reference point for knowing whether he is asleep or awake. This is the greatest difficulty encountered along this road, the impossibility of distinguishing between a dreamlike and wakeful state. When awakened, even for a short period of time, it is possible to differentiate between these states. It is possible to love, think, reason, and work without being conscious of having done so. Man has very few moments of true consciousness. When one is not awake, it is possible to realize that fact only by attaining consciousness. Then one feels a sensation of having been absent for a long time and having suddenly returned. What mainly contributes to the dreamlike state are habits and the identification invariably produced between an individual and that which he accomplishes or visualizes through his senses. He forgets himself and becomes identified with sensations. There is a flight of consciousness, which forsakes the individual to project or identify itself with the object toward which it is attracted. When this process commences, there only remains the human machine, which does not make its own decisions or really think. The first step in consciousness is a systematic and constant self-observation to prevent the flight of consciousness. A constant sensation of one's own identity should be maintained, always thinking, I am the one who wants this. I am the one who is acting at this moment. I am seeing this. To be conscious, it is necessary not to forget oneself, as forgetfulness brings on the dream. As it is necessary to perform many activities of a material nature, one's own identity is overlooked. To overcome this obstacle, it is necessary to train one's attention in order to set up a division. In the first place would be the ego, and in the second place the goal to be attained. This is similar to the beam of a lantern, which has to pass through a magnifying glass in order to illuminate an object. The shining beam represents the attention and the lens, the ego. By means of this similitude, it is possible to appreciate the mental technique which should be resorted to in order to be conscious or awake. Naturally, this is only the first step, as there are many degrees of consciousness which one reaches after successful awakenings. As the student begins to try to remember himself, he realizes how difficult this is when he realizes that a month before he was completely asleep in spite of believing the contrary. Suddenly, and due to a shock, he awakens, recognizing his previous state of unconsciousness. When a duality of attention has been attained, it is necessary to refuse to be identified with emotive states and strong impressions. It is possible that one may be conscious when alone, but upon entering the outside world, falls deeply asleep. After definite impressions are received, it is necessary to exert willpower to maintain the sensation of the ego. With practice, this is very easy. As a higher state is attained, perception changes, because it is then that things are seen from within, and not as an individual believes they are. Little by little, surprising discoveries are made. For example, one discovers that a human being can nourish himself by different means, the grossest of which is digestion, and the most subtle, the absorption of energy through simulation through stimulation of the senses. The scale of values change completely upon perceiving the difference between reality and illusion. To know where the road to awakening leads, one must travel on it, for it is useless to talk about it with one who has not made the journey. Observing the spiritual discipline of the different philosophical and religious systems, it may be seen that they all converge. They provoke awakening by mortification, penances, or complicated exercises. This, from the viewpoint of consciousness, is more fatal than happiness based only on the pleasure of the mass or body. All states of sensual pleasure sink those who experience them into deeper sleep. But pain, on the other hand, either physical or moral, violently shakes the individual, snatching him from his habitual dullness caused by routine habits and his confused mental life. When man is deeply asleep, nature sends pain and suffering to awaken him. One who has not suffered in life has no humanity, as he has been asleep within his own egoism. The greatest truths are before our eyes and we cannot see them. These are in the simple, humble, unnoticed things. It is enough to tell the layperson that he is asleep for him to react sarcastically and incredulously. Only one among thousands will duly weigh what this means. For the common man there is no evolution, consciousness, free will, or humanity. Many will feel an affinity with the ideas in this book, but very few will give them serious study to prove to themselves the truth of these statements. It is so difficult to understand what it means to be conscious that many find it hard to accept that the one who is most conscious is not always the most cultured or educated. Consciousness has nothing to do with this. A humble and uneducated gardener may be more conscious than a nuclear physicist. It is necessary to understand that we are speaking of consciousness as the capacity to perceive reality without mental distortion of any kind. In many cases, excessive scientific or cultural information is a serious obstacle to attaining consciousness, as this information originates mainly from unconscious individuals and is of necessity fragmented, incomplete, and unreal. In order to understand this completely, it is sufficient to consider that within 100 or 200 years, much of what is taught today in universities will most certainly cause laughter. Scientific knowledge is seriously injured when it arises from an inaccurate basis and may lead to an erroneous course. It is interesting to meditate that scientific laws, which may be established in the future from diverse investigations, exist today, but in an occult form. Science only paraphrases occultism, announcing discoveries which were known by the Egyptians and the Rosicrucians. It is important to analyze the relationship between consciousness and the concepts of good and evil. Consciousness is beyond good and evil, as these are totally relative terms. Generally, what is good for some is evil for others. One man may be very good, full of love toward others, do all the good he can, and this kindliness may be entirely mechanical and unconscious, a product of cerebral automatism. Another may be good because his mother taught him kindness, or because he adopts this pose in order to feel superior, and thus neutralize his inferiority complex. This type of love, kindness, and charity is relatively easy to find, but true love, authentic and genuine love toward others, conscious love, is extremely difficult to find. One who reaches consciousness in harmony with the divine law, in harmony with the irradiation of the great universal mind or God, ask and you shall receive, was said over 2,000 years ago by the superconscious son of the great universal mind, the Virgin, Jesus Christ. Few have been able to understand this teaching, as everything said by this great master has been misrepresented, detracted from, and capriciously explained. When one who is in harmony with God makes a request from the depth of his heart, this petition is similar to an order from God himself and will come to pass sooner or later. But can one be considered conscious who lives enslaved to material, sensual intoxication? Can one who amasses wealth without any thought toward others be conscious? Let us recall another aphorism of Jesus Christ: give, and you will receive. One who wishes to receive must start by giving, and this can be seen in business as well as in the human relationships. One who is more concerned with satisfying his clientele than with filling his pockets will always receive just compensation for his deeds. One who gives friendship will receive friendship. One who understands others is understood and tolerated. There are people who complain bitterly of loneliness, a lack of friends, and not being understood. These people have never thought that it is not right to request understanding from others, as this is equivalent to asking all to adjust and condition their ideas to his, and this is not possible. One must begin by tolerating and understanding others, tolerating their defects and imperfections. All have within them the essence of love toward others, but the great majority have not reached within themselves to reveal this love. One who is or has started to be conscious should learn to live according to the laws of nature, which are the forces manifested by God so that life may exist. Although an individual may be very conscientious, he cannot break these laws or endeavor to go beyond them, but he can and should use them consciously for the benefit of humanity. One of these is the law of survival of the fittest. One who desires to accomplish something must be strong so that he is not swept away by others stronger than he. As we are acting within a physical body, we must start by keeping it in a perfect state of health. One of the most important factors for this is carefully avoiding negative emotions, depression, melancholy, and sadness, as these waste nervous energy. If it is true that certain psychic states may be due to purely physical reasons, it is significant that the change in health of an individual starts when he begins to think or feel positively. The mind must be taught to think for itself about pleasant things, eradicating all that is evil, useless, and idle. Moderation at meals is fundamental in order not to lower excessively the volative vibration, as all ingested matter lacks consciousness and must be assimilated and digested by the stomach and by the conscience. Always keep active during physical exercise according to age and physical constitution. Do not smoke or drink alcohol. The cigarette is a slow but sure way to sap creative faculties. Complete and deep breathing helps enormously to maintain psychological equilibrium and increases resistance against illness and nervous depression. Complete breathing, which begins in the stomach, continues in the diaphragm, and ends in the chest. Exhalation must be complete as possible. It is also advisable every morning to stand before an open window and breathe deeply for 5 or 10 minutes, with the mind concentrated on what is being done. Once energy has been replaced with food, sleep, and deep breathing, it is necessary to learn to economize this energy. The true occultist should perfectly manage his own energy. He should know exactly how to distribute and organize it so as not to squander it, as usually happens. In order to be able to distribute nervous energy correctly and perfectly, it is most necessary that thoughts and actions should follow the same course. It is highly noxious to be thinking constantly about what has to be done within 10 minutes or the next half hour. This bad habit is one of the principal causes of an anxiety, which is manifested as an impatience to finish everything rapidly and reach the end of the road. One who suffers from chronic anxiety lives mentally projected into the future. It is interesting to analyze the disastrous effects produced by the squandering of energy, unpleasantness, the lack of enthusiasm for any undertaking. The simple act of picking up a coin from the ground, if done indifferently and without the desire to do so, consumes more nervous energy than running 100 meters enthusiastically. In all books treating psychology, we read that enthusiasm is one of the most powerful forces in existence. What is the reason for this power? Enthusiasm is a state of profound spiritual exaltation, which produces perfect mental and psychic concentration. Here is the key to flowing with energy. Let us make an effort to accomplish our daily labor with as much enthusiasm as if our very lives depended on it. Even the simple and routine act of shaving or dressing, for example, should be done enthusiastically and with interest. One who cannot burn with enthusiasm for something will never be a conqueror. It is not sufficient to wish to conquer, not sufficient to wish to win. It is necessary to feel within oneself a deep and sustained thirst for accomplishing what is desired. All desires and energy should be concentrated on that to be attained, as the one who desires 1,000 small things at once acquires nothing, for he disperses his mental power in all directions. There are 3 things that are intimately related and which must be used together to develop consciousness, and these are imagination, feeling, and action or movement of the body. Movements when walking, working with one's hands, and movement in general powerfully influence the mental and emotional states during these actions. On the other hand, the quality of thoughts and emotions also influences the way of standing, talking, and walking. It is interesting to realize that through the body's movements we are able to act within the soul in order to modify negative states, replacing these for greater vibrations. This is the reason for certain movements and signs during Catholic, Masonic, and other rituals. A man who is strong, optimistic, and physically healthy walks upright, head lifted, shoulders held back, and gives an impression of confidence and strength in all his movements. When he shakes hands, his grip is strong and decided, and his voice is pleasant and clear. One who is nervous walks bowed down, never looks straight ahead, and cannot talk in a group, though should he do so, his voice trembles noticeably. This man should practice psychic vitalization, as stated in this book, in order to become a conqueror. To change a negative mental and psychic state for a higher state, the following exercise is successful and produces calmness, peace, and serenity. Strive to reduce the speed of what one is doing until movement is like a slow-motion camera. Every movement should be carefully studied, must be done with concentration, with the soul in it. Breathe deeply and relax all muscles. In reference to mental concentration, a deep state of concentration will occur which is difficult to reach by other means. It is very important during this exercise to feel or be conscious of every part of the body that is in motion. Once this has been attained by practice, the muscles, nerves, blood, and the air entering into the lungs must be felt. Naturally, this procedure should be adopted solely during the exercise. At night, when preparing for slumber, all muscles should be relaxed in order to sleep more deeply than usual. Generally, deep sleep is not attained until there is a total muscular and nervous relaxation, which may take 3 or 4 hours. This period, which we could call pre-sleep or preparatory, is almost completely lost for the purpose of energetic renewal, which occurs during slumber. since this renewal only takes place during deep sleep. Thus, one who is able to enter rapidly into deep sleep will keep his body full of energy and will require less sleep as he takes full advantage of all his hours of slumber. In order to relax, follow this procedure. Lie down, breathe deeply several times, and calmly concentrate thoughts on the solar plexus. After this breathing exercise, start by relaxing the face muscles, forehead, eyes, and jaws. Then continue with the neck, arms, thorax, etc. until reaching the feet. When he feels ill, the student should make an effort to overcome his ailment using his mental power. Illness is only a negative vibratory state, and, as all vibration, may be altered by mental power. It is surprising how the organism reacts when an intelligent mental power comes into action, which is endeavoring to help him overcome his ailment. The great obstacle that the desire for spiritual superiority comes up against is inertia, or negative power. The desire and wish to excel from a powerful active The desire and wish to excel form a powerful active power in the individual, an active power opposed to an habitual mechanical life, which is inertia. In order that this active power should not be annulled by the negative part, the student must constantly fortify his active power by study and rigid self-discipline. The majority of students of occultism limit their accomplishment to good intentions only, for all their labor swings like a pendulum between active and negative power, and this situation may last during all his lifetime. This is the great danger of being alone and isolated. One who desires to attain spiritual perfection alone makes the greatest mistakes, because in the long run, a sense of peace and tranquility comes from the absence of psychic encounters with other personalities. This man feels at peace and firmly believes he has found himself and conquered his consciousness. He does not realize that from this tranquility is born a deep state of sleep. Thus, just as evolution exists, involution also exists, that is, retrocession. The type of spiritual fulfillment of which we have spoken above is therefore involution, because when this individual lives normally amongst others, he is constantly encountering psychic shocks which contribute to keeping him awake. When these shocks disappear due to his being isolated in a monastery, for example, deep sleep ensues, which naturally offers great tranquility. It is for this reason that the ideal condition for achieving true and effective spiritual progress, which will lead to consciousness and willpower, is work within a group under the guidance of one who is truly and effectively awake. This guide will constantly endeavor to maintain and produce situations precisely destined to keep his disciples awake. Chapter 12. Educating Willpower. Apart from intelligence, the most precious gift of a human being is willpower. In the great human mass, willpower is intermingled with simple desire. Willpower goes further, is wrested from the depths of self. It is a powerful internal pressure, the visible manifestation of which an individual wishes to accomplish. The expression "to have willpower" is very apt, as it refers to a man who follows a rigid discipline in order to attain a desired purpose. This power or capacity for self-mastery is evident in diverse forms in different people. Some have a great deal of this power and others lack it completely. Success in life depends to a great extent on the willpower of an individual, the capacity to persevere, to work hard when others fall by the wayside, to overcome unpleasant situations, misery, and failure. There are people of great intelligence and exquisite sensibility, but who cannot forge their way in life as they lack willpower. On the other hand, we see those successful in industry and commerce who are not gifted with great intelligence, but their constancy and absolute dedication to work and their strong personality overcome their competitors. Many times a badly educated individual, obtuse and insensitive, is more capable of success than someone who is very cultured and sensitive, as he has no fear of injuring others or harassing them with demands of a commercial nature, for example. A very sensitive man is always wondering what the man he visits for a commercial or business interview is thinking of him. This consideration toward others undermines his push, as he is afraid of being ill received and fears becoming importunate or troublesome. The "what will people say" is a certain cause of failure and limitation. One who thinks thus has a passive personality and therefore is unable to impose his will upon those of a positive nature, unless he develops the courage, push, audacity, and the absolute lack of consideration toward others. It is necessary to understand the sense of the word consideration. It is interesting to verify the intimate relationship between willpower and enthusiasm. One who is enthusiastic about something is very close to possessing willpower. We could say that willpower is contained, sustained, and reasoning. We could say that willpower is contained, sustained, and reasoning enthusiasm. Apathy or lack of willpower is absolute indifference toward everything. The lack of, or more, some French word, lack of interest in self and in others. A cold and indifferent person will never influence others to help or support him at any time, as he cannot communicate to them the psychic vibration of enthusiasm. And when we come across someone with a lack of enthusiasm, we think he is not convinced of the goodness or quality of the product or the ideal he wishes to sell. This man cannot sell himself. He is unable to display his hidden talents. Exercise plan. 1. Intensive physical exercises according to the capacity of the student. These may vary from weightlifting to gymnastics of any kind. In any physical education manual, adequate exercises which are suitable for any need or age will be found. 2. 5 to 10 minutes breathing deeply every morning, standing with arms outstretched to the side upon inhaling, retaining breath as long as possible, and exhaling through the mouth, simultaneously dropping arms. 3. Sitting on a chair with hands tightly clasped. Breathe deeply, endeavoring to concentrate upon what one is going to say, and repeat the following suggestion in a decided and energetic manner. My will is strong and powerful. My will is strong and powerful. My will is strong and powerful. All I desire I will accomplish, because I am a center of accumulation of life, strength, and power. 4. Sitting completely upright in a chair with the spine straight and hands clasped, legs together, and remain completely still as long as possible. Stillness should be total and complete. 5. When completely physically exhausted, upon arriving home to rest, go out again and walk for a few minutes. During this walk, mentally repeat, I am making this sacrifice so my willpower will increase daily. As a general rule for development, the following should be acted upon. Never give way to desires appearing during the day. A desire is a strong power, and a power which is extinguished upon the satisfaction of the same. If then we refuse to satisfy a multitude of desires and retain this power, maintaining it in suspense, we have in our hands powerful energy which increases our personal magnetism. The physical body is like a horse which must be kept on a short rein to keep it from running away. If we give way, it starts to demand more and is never satisfied. It is necessary to have absolute control over food, alcohol, and cigarettes, which are strong and constant temptations. Every temptation given way to is strength that is lost. Sleep must be carefully regulated. We must not sleep more than necessary. Upon awakening in the morning, the habit of remaining half awake or daydreaming should be carefully avoided, as this habit disrupts the imagination, and this disorder subsequently becomes physical. Avoid as much as possible unconscious and mechanical actions such as biting nails, tapping on the floor with the foot, swaying when standing up, and other actions of a similar nature. Endeavor to stabilize psychic activity. That is, do not suddenly change from laughter to sorrow. Always be tranquil and calm. As emotions and impulsive actions are controlled, a stronger willpower will develop, which will easily impose itself upon negative power or inertia. One habit which should be developed as much as possible in order to attain strong willpower is order. Previously, draw up a plan of work for each day, which should not be altered or changed for any reason whatsoever. Get into the habit of always accomplishing what is proposed, no matter what this may be. One who is not capable of making his own decisions is just a plaything of nature. Feel oneself to be at all times the owner and master of the body, which may be commanded at any moment to execute what is desired. It is superfluous to state that an individual with vices, whatever these may be, cannot acquire strong willpower. Therefore, one who is enslaved by a vice must cut it out by the roots and at the base of its cause. Vices, bad habits, and complexes are veritable chains which completely paralyze willpower. And I will end here this session. The next chapter, 13, is called Education and Mastery of Sex. Should prove to be interesting. This is the Dove Lady, over and out for now.